Hey, welcome to Freedom Decoded. I'm Demir. This is Carey. We ditched the 9 to 5, moved abroad, and created a life that was better than we ever could have imagined. Today, we help other people get organized, get their life back so they can create the freedom that they really want in their life. You can check us out at winningtheweek.com, and our new book is out. Winning the Week, it's a bestseller. Check it out on Amazon.
But this podcast is our chance to sort of let our hair down and give you a peek behind the curtain at what Demir and I are currently thinking about. And today we have an exciting topic. We're going to be talking about how to plan and execute a workcation, which, as this podcast goes live, we will actually be on a workcation. So it's very timely and relevant.
We'll probably film some podcasts from Italy, I think.
Hopefully, yeah.
So let me back up and let's just assume somebody is hearing the word workcation and drawing a complete blank.
Right, like what is this?
Like what the heck is workcation? So a workcation is a third category. So if there's two categories in your mind, there's working and there's on vacation. Workcation is a new hybrid category that has become possible with remote working and logging in from anywhere. And it is just what it sounds like. You are neither completely working nor completely on vacation. You are a hybrid of both. We're going to talk about a lot of the advantages of this, but they're pretty obvious. It means that you can, a lot of times extend your vacation so much longer than you could have before. So instead of taking a week and a half in Italy, you could take a week and a half off and extend another 2 weeks in Italy in a workcation mode, meaning you're sort of on downshifted, maybe summer hours, you're logging in, you're attending meetings, but you're also logging off at a certain point and going and enjoying Italy. And so that, my friends, is the concept of workcation. We're very bullish on this.
Yeah, and what I love most about it is that it's a true win-win situation. You're winning and your employer is winning.
Yep.
Or if you're running your own business, then your business will still be winning. So you're going to be able to feel more relaxed, more rested and recharged and just stimulated because you're in this new environment. And from our experience, your productivity actually goes up. So
dramatically so.
That helps your employer and your business.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention, a lot of times we talk about this push-pull between productivity and worker happiness, when really all the studies show that the happier your workers are, they are almost universally more productive.
Right.
So this really becomes a false choice. And whenever I see this where they're saying, oh, people are getting lazy, no, when you have happier workers, you have more productive workers, especially when it comes to knowledge work.
Right.
More rested, more happy workers equals more productive. Maybe someday we'll come onto the other side of that curve and people will get too lazy and we'll become like, everybody will be like working in Paris 35 hours a week. But right now, that is not the case.
Well, but also I think people think, oh, well, if my worker was happy, then they wouldn't be working at all. It's like, that's not true. People like to work. I mean, you and I love to work. It gives us so much personal satisfaction. So we would actually be more unhappy if we were told we could not work or we're trying to truly take a full vacation. We get bored.
Yeah. And remember, the way that we think about this is that this is really us playing a lot of catch up. For many years, we've had corporations come to us and ask us to advise them. They don't like what we say, because they come and say to us, why are all of our workers leaving us to become small-time entrepreneurs? Don't they know it's harder? Don't they know that 9 out of 10 businesses fail?
Yeah.
Right? Why would they possibly go into that meat grinder when we've got such a comfortable situation here and they just can collect a paycheck? And I often say, flip that over. You should be asking yourself, why are they so eager to leave you to jump into a buzzsaw? Like, what is it that's so terrible about working for you that makes them still want to go into something that has a 9 in 10 chance of failing? that is in so many ways harder. It's because you're so inflexible and the quality of life is so brutal in the corporate world. So I don't see this as some like new massive giveaway. I see it as a little bit of just a rebalancing of the scales and a catch up to where we should be in terms of the work-life balance that really got out of whack.
Yeah, and I think one thing is over the last few years is employers have become much more flexible with their workers being remote. And so we've had a lot of success with clients asking for these workcation times and being able to get them. I mean, we had one family that actually moved to Colombia for a whole 6 months and took a workcation here in our city, Medellin, because the husband's employer was flexible with that. So it's definitely possible. And he works for like a big 5 firm. So it's happening. This is the time to ask for it if you want it.
Yeah. So why take a workcation? So for somebody who doesn't currently have this category in their mind, maybe is even a little bit dubious. We'll talk later about how to negotiate a workcation, but let's just start with, why would you even want to? Maybe there's somebody out there saying like, "Oh, that sounds gross. I'm getting the worst of both worlds. I'm not off, and really relaxing, but I'm also not on. It just sounds gross." What would you say to that person?
I would say when you're able to take a longer period in a new country or a new place, you're actually able to see what life is like there. You actually have to like live a local life. When you're just going somewhere for a weekend, I mean, your schedule is crammed and you got to see these 10 museums and these 5 monuments, and then you get back on the plane and you come back home and you're even more exhausted than when you left. That's
so hectic.
Workcation is where the pace slows down dramatically. You're going to get yourself an Airbnb. You're not going to be in a hotel because you're going to want to actually spread out and like have space. You're going to live more like a local. You're going to shop at local grocery stores. It's just a completely different experience of travel, and one that we find to be much more rewarding.
Yeah, I can't underline this enough. There's something hectic about the old model of travel, especially if you're in North America where you only get off maybe 2 weeks a year, and you go traveling to Europe and you're trying to see everything. And you actually come back from those vacations and you're way more stressed and way more tired. I often hear my clients say, "I need a vacation from my vacation. That was way too stressful and hectic." And there's something about workcation that can be a bit of an extender. And I often say this to my clients, don't think about it as either or. Take a workcation along with a vacation. So go to Italy, rent a place on Airbnb for the full month, get the month discount. Ooh, those juicy month-long discounts on Airbnb are nothing to be,
they are significant.
Laughed at. They are significant. Get yourself a nice Airbnb for the month. Take 2 weeks of vacation at the end of a 2-week staycation. So you go there, you get yourself settled, you continue working for 2 weeks while you're sort of, letting the kids get settled in, adjust to the time zone change. And then right when you have your bearings and you really understand where things are and what you want to do, boom, you've got 2 weeks of vacation, and you can really enjoy that vacation. You can really sink into it and get restoration and relaxation. And so the number one thing I would argue is this takes vacations to the next level. It's not a replacement for vacation. I think about it often as an extender. But let's talk also about maybe some practical things.
Yeah.
We're talking about vacation as like enjoyment, but let's be honest, a lot of people have to take vacation time to deal with family emergencies, health emergencies. So how can it affect that too? How can workcation become a tool to deal with maybe just the slings and arrows of life?
Yeah, because maybe you have like an ailing family member you need to take care of, or you have to have some medical procedure done. I mean, for me, what I would do in those situations is ask myself, hey, where can I get really great healthcare that's also a really great vacation spot? What's interesting about that, for a lot of people who live in North America, this is a very strange concept to medical tourism is sort of like this weird edge thing. But for us, having traveled so much, now we're like, if we had to get any kind of normal medical procedure done, we would not do it in the U.S. Because
we shop for the best place, and it's different based on what you're looking for.
Right, and there's so many options. I mean, Thailand, Mexico,
South Africa has incredible dental care.
I mean, Colombia here has been amazing for our healthcare. So I would ask, hey, where do I want to chill out and spend a lot of time? We actually had to ask ourselves that when our first child was going to be born, and we actually weren't sure if we were going to be able to get a visa to stay in Colombia. So we were already shopping for other countries. We're like, where do we want to live? Well, we have this child. And that's very common amongst expats to be looking out for those different locations. And so they can enjoy that experience.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on this, I've even had clients just escape bad weather. Too hot? Go somewhere cooler. Too cold? Go somewhere warmer for a month. There's what's great about it is when you really start thinking about this tool of Workcation, you realize that it adds it's not just X and Y dimension. You don't just get a little bit more of the things you had before. We're talking about a whole new Z dimension of possibilities.
Yeah.
So, Carey, who would you say that this is really good for, should really be thinking about this versus maybe who it's not as good for or even bad for?
Because obviously not everybody has jobs where this is going to be really easy or possible. I would say it's really good for knowledge workers and professionals that work from computers and laptops, right? So a lot of that work, like even if right now you feel like you're taking a lot of phone calls and you need to be in a particular time zone, a lot of that work you can find can be renegotiated if you are choosing to go to a totally different time zone, for example. I would say it's very bad for service providers.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're a service provider that needs to be in a physical location
like
providing,
a masseuse.
Yes, a masseuse or something like
Doctor.
that. Even doctors, though, I know some of my doctors here in Columbia. They're big on vacations here in Columbia. They will offer virtual appointments even during their extended vacation times. Like they do.
And we even know a veterinarian.
Yep.
And she, you would think, oh no, the animals have to be brought in, and she said, no, I can just look at them.
And she's from Canada, so that's an example from Canada. So yeah, even for some service providers, there is some flexibility there, maybe for a slightly shorter period of time. But, if you're a hardcore service provider and you got to be somewhere at a set time, I mean, there's just nothing to do about that.
Nobody's going to pay you for a virtual massage.
Nope.
That's gotta happen in person. Yeah. Or a virtual teeth cleaning, right? You got to get the teeth cleaned, right? Okay. So let's talk about how to set the stage for your very first workcation. And I think the most important thing is to open up the conversation and start the negotiation with, now I was going to say your boss, but the truth is whoever is on your counterparty is.
Yeah.
That could be a boss. It could be your main client. If you're a contractor, it could be your coworkers, a business partner. So whoever your counterparty is that you need to negotiate with, open that conversation at the right time in the right way. And I think a key thing here is start small, right? Start with a very easy to grant ask, and maybe even start with a catalyst. So for example, often your first workcation could really work well if you were saying, hey, I need to go to my mother's house and look after her for a week.
Right.
These are the kinds of things that's very hard for people to say no to. They want to say yes, right? They want to help you out. But then once you've gotten that foot in the door, you've already proven, hey, it worked for a week. There were no problems. All the business got done. It becomes increasingly easy for you to say, well, I'm going to go to Florida for a week instead of going to my mom's to help her.
Yeah. Yeah, and you want to make sure that during that 1 week period, you really knock it out of the park at your job. You do not want any disasters to happen where people can't get a hold of you or you messed up something and now the client's unhappy. Like you really want to make that week a test week to prove the concept.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't get this idea of like, it's okay for your first test workcations. It's okay for those to be not as enjoyable or even not enjoyable so that you really prove out the case. Because if you have a really big disaster early on in the process, you can leave such a mark that the conversation is closed. Even if it's still something that's viable, people could just have such a bad impression.
They're just going to say no. Yeah.
They're just a knee-jerk no from that.
Yep.
And so you really want to lay some very careful groundwork and make sure that when you have those first couple workcations, you just not only do your job, but knock it out of the park.
Yes, and before you go, what you're going to want to do is some quite a bit of preparation work, right? You're not just going to be like, okay, here I am logging off and heading out. Like you're going to want to sort of put your business analyst hat on and ask yourself
about months ahead of time, just to be clear, not before you go, like a week before you go.
As far as possible. Heck, if you don't even have the workcation planned, this is something you can do right away. Sort of put that business analyst hat on and ask yourself, hey, what are the systems and processes that I actually run in my job? Because we don't get a chance to think about that a lot. We think about the tasks we're doing and the projects. We don't think about the systems.
Yeah, we get this process blindness, right? Where when you're in a process long enough, I don't care who you are. You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you've been put in a process and just keep doing something the way you've always been doing it, you become blind to the ways that you could be doing it better, or the ways that you could do it completely different or more efficiently, or cut out entire parts of the process. You just start to get this, well, this is how we've always done it mentality. And so when we say put your business analyst hat on, what we're really saying is really fight that blindness and try to step really far away from your current business processes and try to get a third party neutral view of them and say, hey, if we were designing this process from a blank slate, how would we design it? It probably wouldn't be this way. There's probably a better way.
Yeah, and don't judge it to start with. Like the first step is just sketching out maybe even a flow chart view if you're a visual thinker, and just ask yourself, how is this process running right now? And where do I fit into that process? What is my specific role? And, right now, of course, you feel like none of those processes can run without you. I get that. But you just want to take a look at that. Once it's on the page, it's going to be so much easier to identify how you could either cut yourself out entirely, or instead of making yourself such an integral part of that process, for example, make it so that you are still part of the process, but you don't need, like, your employees or your coworkers don't need an immediate response from you. They need a response within, say, 24 to 48 hours.
Build in some more give.
That alone, just giving yourself that insulation, is like taking so much pressure off your job, because if you're in the middle of transit or whatever, like no one needs you in that moment.
And this is where you really want to think about hypothetical scenarios. So remember, I talked about this blindness, this process blindness. One of the things that can break through that blindness is hypothetical scenarios. So hypothetical scenario, you get hit by a car and you've got to go to the hospital and convalesce for a month, and you could maybe answer emails 1 hour per week. Right. That hypothetical scenario, as bleak as it might seem, is actually a really interesting thought exercise to say, okay, how would my clients still get what they need? How would my team operate without me? And usually what you'll find is there's information in your brain that needs to be put into an SOP or a standard operating procedure, so that if you weren't on staff or you weren't there, somebody else could simply jump in on your behalf. You might realize it needs to go the other way. There's information other people on your team have that needs to be put into an SOP. You might even realize, hey, actually, in order to deal with that scenario, we would actually have to completely redesign how we offer our product or service. And that's great. All of those thoughts are incredibly valuable as you're trying to put your business analyst hat on and say, what is the best process? Because, again, Elon Musk is a bit controversial as a figure these days, but one of his sayings I think is just tremendous. He says the best part is no part. The best process is no process. Meaning, let's make it as simple as possible. Let's cut away all of the extraneous, unnecessary parts and processes so that we can get to the leanest possible version of just doing this thing.
Yep, totally. And so then once you've decided on some of those process improvements, or even if you just you want to sort of like change how you are communicating with your team, you're going to want to start doing that right away to get everybody used to that, right? So that when you leave, it's not going to feel like a change at all. It'll feel like just the exact same thing is happening. Plus, you can work out any kinks and problems.
Absolutely. So, you really want to start testing and iterating well before. And even when you're on site, right? And so that's the important thing is, you want to start, the process of creating new workflows is often a political / interpersonal process. It's not just you unveiling it and saying, hey, everyone, this is a better way.
Right.
It's you talking to them, negotiating with them, convincing them.
Pointing out that maybe we could do it slightly differently.
This is a win-win. Look how you win. I mean, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
So let's imagine, okay, you've negotiated some space. You've maybe even, got a workcation on the horizon, in the distant horizon. How do you start the hardcore planning for your first staycation? Sorry, workcation. I keep messing that word up.
I think that the biggest thing is people are going to be asking themselves, well, what about big projects that I have during that time? And for big, really important, super juicy projects, you're going to want to try to either push those before your workcation and get those like executed and done with then, or scheduled for like after your workcation.
Ideally.
Yeah.
Create a blank space.
If you're truly going to have to be working like a maniac when you're on your workation, it's not really going to be as enjoyable. Like you want it to be sort of like a normal, even keel, or maybe even like a slightly lower level of work than you normally do.
And
so
everybody has that. I know even people who are
everyone
busy,
has-
they'll
yeah.
say, no, everything's busy. It's like, come on, let's be realistic. There's always
there's
higher
busier
highs
times.
and lower lows.
like for us, we just launched this book, so we are scheduling this workcation to come literally like a week and a half after the book launch is done, because we're like, we don't want to be launching a book when we're trying to also enjoy ourselves.
Yeah,
like we just want to be present and on call for any emergencies that might come up. So that worked really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
So avoid big projects, try to push them forward or push them back, right? Plan it for a time when you're not facing huge deadlines or assignments, and try to get as much work done ahead of time. Now, try to avoid this idea of doing a lot of shallow work and then just having a lot more shallow work to do later. We really want you to be leveraged, meaning I would rather somebody spend 2 or 3 months heading into a workcation creating better processes that make life easier, not just for the workcation, but even when you come back. A lot of our clients say, wow, the workcation was a catalyst for me to just create better processes. And now every day feels easier because I renovated our team's workflow, our team system.
It's going to start feeling easier right away, not even when you're on the workation. Like you're going to get the benefit right away. I'll give you an example. Right now, as we're preparing for this workcation, we're realizing that we need to prep a lot of content in advance, because there's YouTube videos that need to come out, there's podcasts, there's blogs. And what's great about doing that ahead of time is it's forcing us, because of the sheer volume of content, to improve our content creation process.
Yes.
So we're finding a way that we're going to be able to turn out a lot more content faster, which obviously we're not going to stop doing once we come back from workcation. Like
benefits us forever.
We're just going to keep doing it that way.
But having said that, so that's the important caveat. I had a client, Rob, who stacked up a bunch of work. He wrote reports, and so he actually just sort of worked overtime, stacked up a bunch of reports, and then held on to them. And so as he was at his workcation, he was still checking emails and attending a couple meetings, but he would just like dole out some of these reports on a regular basis to make it look like, oh, Rob's still producing. But in truth, he had actually front loaded a lot of that production. And so that's something you can do. Again, I prefer you to be doing it leveraged. I prefer it to be an improvement that makes your life permanently easier. But there is a time and a place for just stacking up a little bit of work ahead of time.
Totally. I love that so much.
So let's talk about, okay, you've negotiated the space, and now you're planning your first staycation. What is a shakedown cruise, and why should somebody take it before their big workcation?
So yeah, this is the first, I think of it as like a trial workcation. A shakedown cruise is something they do on like sailboats, apparently. That it's just sort of like they take the sailboat around, but close to home, so that if they do find like there's a hole in the boat or something, they're still going to have access to like help and support.
So before going on like a transatlantic trip, they'll do a week-long trip near the coast because something's going to break and you want to be close to home.
They want to test, make sure they have all the right supplies. They're not missing some crucial rope or something. So you want to do something similar to that. Is you're pressure testing how this is going to work. And then it's going to make you feel more calm. And it's going to make your employers and clients feel more calm too.
Yeah. And I think a great way to do that, if you've got, say, again, we said start building small. So, if you've got a week that you're going to take off, I don't think you need to do a shakedown cruise before that week. A week is the shakedown cruise. Right,
totally.
Right, that's a fine amount of time. But if you've got a 3 or 4 week staycation, vacation combo coming up, what you might want to do is just conveniently get sick. And I know this seems a little bit disingenuous, but hear me out. There's something nice about you just calling in saying, gang, I've got a terrible flu. I'm going to be out right here in the middle of the week. Because it does 2 things. Number one, 3 days is a great amount of time to see how people operate in your absence. You're actually still there in the background, and you're probably still even doing work. You're just, gating all of your work. You're not sending out emails. You're not sending out any of your work. You can still have full work days. In fact, you'll probably find that they're incredibly productive because nobody will be bothering you, and you'll get a lot of good deep work done.
Yeah.
But the point being is that it's also taking them by surprise. And I think that that element of surprise is actually really helpful to stress test your systems. Because if everybody is mentally prepared for you not to be there, then what they really do is they're not doing the work, they're just waiting for the work.
Right.
Meaning they're like, he'll be back in 3 days, so I'll just hold up and save up all the things I need for him or her and just drop them on you when you come back. Whereas when you take them by surprise, they really do have to problem solve in the moment, right? They can't prepare for it. And I think that that element of surprise really forces them to operate without you and actually helps you see how well they operate. And then take careful notes. If people are freaking out or there's an emergency or a process doesn't work right, those are the leaks in your boat that you need to go back and fix before your real staycation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would even tweak that. And what I would personally say is, I would say my husband just got sick and he needs me to stay home to take care of him for a couple days. But don't worry, I'm still going to be working my normal hours, because then I want people to be behaving in as normal of a way with me as possible. I don't want them to be giving me any special treatment. You know what I mean? So I would prefer personally if they thought I was taking care of somebody else who was sick.
But wouldn't they just email you? And just wouldn't all the same requests come to you and they would expect you to answer them?
But because I've already been tweaking my processes in advance and improving my communication, that should be easier to handle, first of all.
Yeah.
And I actually want them to have the experience of me working remote and notice that it's the same.
That it's the same.
That there's been no change, and they can still get a hold of me just as easily. I will say, actually, really crucially, when you start going on the workcation, I would say the worst thing people can do is suddenly cut off communication with their team.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that's going to make your team and your clients and your boss feel more uncomfortable than if they have not heard from you. So even those little things like pinging off some emails and just sort of they're going to get the sense yeah, she's on top of it.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. If I wasn't clear, I think the shakedown cruise is completely different from your actual workcation, right? I think my assertion, and I think there's a valid difference of opinion here. My assertion is that there's actually something good about a 2 or 3 day shock to the system, because it's so short that you can always come back. And if you're really there in the background, if there is an emergency, you can actually step in. So you're not actually gone, you're just faking being gone.
Right.
You would never, ever do that in the actual workcation.
Right.
In the actual workcation, you want to create the illusion of I'm here, I'm around, don't worry.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'm picking up responses. Maybe not instantly, but you're getting responses by the end of the day. That, just to make that key distinction so nobody mistakes that.
So once you have done that shakedown cruise and you want to kind of wait, you want to give your employer, your clients some breathing space. You don't want to go on your full workcation right away. But once they're sort of comfy with the idea, you can pitch them on that more 2-week or 4-week workcation idea. And this is when it really starts to get fun, right? You've done all this preparation work and all this planning, and now you get to reap the benefits.
So, in a perfect world, the slower you can ramp up, the better. Right. So, everything we've talked about to date, the more small workations you can take that start to prove out the point of don't worry, it's no different. We're working fine. In fact, if possible, show them that you're working better than ever. Come back to your boss and say, hey, this thing we were never able to get done, when I finally got away from the team and just I was still around, you guys still had me available, but I just had a little bit of distance to be able to grind out this big SOP or this big project or this big proposal, right? So ideally, you're not just showing them that it's no different. You could also potentially prove the point that it's additive, that it helps your work. Anyway, so you've created the longest ramp that you possibly can, but now let's assume that you're ready to go hell for leather and the sky's the limit. What can you do, Carey? What's possible?
I think like what you want to be doing is checking off major bucket list items. And because you're going to be doing these workcations more than once, you don't have to worry about doing like all your bucket lists in one. In fact, you want to try to pick like one location, maybe two, but ideally one, and you're just sort of like there. So maybe it's like a cultural trip where you're taking the whole family to Paris for a month, like we did last year, or you're going to do some like fitness hiking thing in Costa Rica, or you're going to do some adventure trip in Thailand.
Yeah.
Something big and major like that that's like super bucket listy.
Yeah, like rock climbing in Thailand, biking in Colombia. These are all things that we've seen. We had a client who had a SIM card and took a road trip across the turquoise coast in Turkey. They just got a car and just went. And because of the time change between Turkey, what he was able to do is basically they were always driving in the morning, and then by the afternoon they would be in a Airbnb or a hotel or hostel, and he would log on with his SIM card and do his hours in the sort of like afternoon. And so these are the kinds of things that become possible. And it's pretty crazy because even like on a workcation, we had a client go to Tuscany and learn Italian for half the day and then work the other half the day.
Right.
So a lot of stuff becomes possible. And the kind of stuff that really often falls onto people's wish list. Like, oh, wouldn't it be so great if one day, the kind of stuff you push into your retirement, maybe when I retire, I could.
Right.
Well, maybe you could do that now.
Right. And a lot of people are. Yeah. I would say if you do want your work to become fully remote, this is definitely the way to step into that and to get that. I mean, our whole team is remote, but we had one employee, our content manager, Harley, who was like legit traveling around the world full time while working for us for several years. She started like this, and now she's not traveling as much. But let me tell you, her productivity has been the same. I've detected no difference.
No difference.
When she was in Patagonia, when she was in Taiwan, like no different from what she's doing now.
We've also noticed internally when we've been somewhere really cool and we need to get our work done in order to go out and play, it is an incredible sweetener.
Yes.
To get good work done fast. And so I'm not surprised at all that we haven't noticed a change in her productivity, because there's something about, remember that Taj Mahal time? We rented an Airbnb. We were literally in the city with the Taj Mahal. We had to do a bunch of things that seemed like it seemed like a work day.
Yeah, we're like, oh, we got to do all this stuff.
And we got it done in 3 hours. We tag teamed it like you would never believe, because it was like, as soon as you're done with this, you can go see the Taj Mahal. And I'll tell you what, like, there's something great. I mean, I think a lot of people are haunted by the sense of like, God, I spent 8 hours at work today, but a lot of it is I was working slow. I was dragging my feet. I got distracted.
I was doing the easy stuff first, skipping the hard work.
If you had put a gun to my head, I probably could have got my work done in 3.5, 4 hours today.
Right.
It's just like, what's the point of getting it done if there's nothing fun?
Yeah,
to
if
go
I'm
out
just
and
going
do
to be
afterwards.
sitting at my desk until 5 no matter what.
So like, also productivity hack, when you're waiting to do something fun to get your work done, you get your work done faster. It's just a simple rule of human psychology.
Yeah, it's a lot more about energy than it is about time. And that's what's crucial to remember here. In fact, I would not be surprised, like you said, if your employer is like surprised at how much your productivity goes up when you're on this workcation.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the leveraged work, the deep work, you're doing that first. And that's what they want from you. Like, they might not say they want that. They might say they want you to answer these emails, but what they really want is for you to be driving their business or your business forward.
Yeah. I mean, let's sort of wrap up, because I think we've covered everything. This is going to be huge. Workcations are going to be a thing, and they're going to be huge. If you want to take a pass on it and watch everybody do it for a couple of years until you finally go, wait a minute, I want to get in on this too, then fine. But I'm telling you, this is going to be a huge quality of life improvement for knowledge workers and people who can remote work. And so, my advice is do not miss out on this. This is going to be something that's going to be tremendous for you. And try to use some creativity here. Reach back into that playful mindset that maybe you had when you were younger and ask yourself, like, what's my wish list? What's my bucket list? Have I wanted to learn a language? Have I wanted to go certain places, be exposed to certain things? Maybe even just, go hang out with my friends. We had a friend who has an extra house, or not an extra house, but like a back house in his property in Colorado. And we sort of reached out and we're like, hey, could we come stay with you guys for a month and just hang out and work? And so, connecting with friends at a deeper level, going and taking care of family. I mean, there's so much that becomes possible when you could just take your work with you and do it with you.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's going to be huge for everyone. I mean, I will say we've even had clients that, because their bosses were so just hardcore about saying no to, they really wanted a workflow to be like in the office all the time. They've actually taken even just 6 months to change jobs. Some of them even changed careers, and it's because of this lifestyle benefit. It's not just about the workcation, it's about how you feel every day, every week, and having that flexibility that's worth so much more than even a raise these days.
I don't understand why people are fighting it. One, it's done. This battle is fought. You're never going to put, you're never going to put the jack in the box again. Like, it's not going back.
The genie's out of the bottle.
The genie is out of the bottle. You're never putting it back in again. But also, I think people get really zeroed in on this idea that productivity only happens. It's like a Foucaultian surveillance model. Like, people will only work if you really are watching them,
right,
and like pushing them, and like this sort of model of human behavior that you can only get good work from people from a sort of negative, pressure, fear-based, anxiety-based like environment. And they would never say that. People who are advocates, they couch it in all these beautiful words like, oh no, there's just something magical about the office. Well, yeah, for you, dude. Like, there are those like 5% of people who the work is their life and they're extroverts and they love the office environment. And I get it. For you, there's nothing. Yeah, this is a bad moment for you. I understand that. Like, you're having a bad time and you're sad because you're losing something that for you was really awesome. But the majority of people did not feel that way about the office, right? And so what I would encourage people who are going through this grief, right, the grief of the loss of the office, is to just recognize when you have happy workers, you have more productivity. Check it. Look it up. Right? Just, like, people just sort of absent any proof say, no, you need to have people in the office to have real productivity. Really? Because when you really look at the studies, when you have happy workers, you have better productivity.
Yeah.
This makes workers very, very happy. Why are you going to stand in front of this freight train? You're going to get flattened. But also, why would you want to?
Right.
That's my rant.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for listening. This has been all about how to plan and execute a workcation. Drop us a comment with where you would like to go for a workcation, and we will see you on the next podcast.